Here we go. Guy Kirkwood, Chief Evangelist of UiPath, welcome.
Thank you, Anders. It's a pleasure to be here.
Guy, it's no secret that getting you by here was one of my goals, and I made 6 LinkedIn goals, and one of them was to interview you, and I think you responded in 12 hours or maybe shorter. Thank you for that.
That's all right.
And now I can take one of them. And you're here today because we are a lot of UiPath RPA developers in general that want your wisdom. And so first of all, what is a Chief Evangelist and what is he doing in the UiPath?
The role of Chief Evangelist was invented by Apple, actually. It was a job that Guy Kawasaki did for Steve Jobs. And the history of it was that Steve Jobs asked another guy to help sell Macs to everybody. And Guy Kawasaki turned around and said, well, that's great, we can sell to a lot of people, we can't sell to the people who buy Microsoft, either Windows or DOS. And this is okay. We can't sell to them because they're zealots. What we can do is we can sell to the agnostics, which I thought was a lovely description. So the Chief Evangelist of UiPath really came to being in early 2016, really to educate the market. And I'm still doing that now, today in 2021. So at that stage, no one understood what RPA was, or what the initials stood for, or even where it came from, or what the purpose was. So it was very much creating the category effectively at that time. And so the role of Chief Evangelist is really, the thing about it is bi-directional. So as well as doing what I do now, which is talking to you and to your viewers, I'm also talking to our customers, of course, and to our implementation partners and our technology partners, and a lot to the analysts. So I'm telling the story outwards, but I'm also gathering information. I'm gathering information and feeding that back into our product teams, into our sales and marketing teams, and so on, so that we can adapt. And now, almost every organization has got a chief evangelist, which is great. It's nice to see that there's a community building up there.
So it's some sort of a double agent that you go out and evangelize and then gather intel back to the organization?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's double agent. I think it's I think the fact that I'm able to have conversations with anybody about what's good, what's bad, what's indifferent about the platform, which means that we continue to listen. I mean, Daniel Diners, our chief executive and co-founder, inculcated in us humility. We're a humble organization, and you can't be humble if you don't listen. If you're fighting your corner the whole time. So it's a vital part of everything that everyone does in UiPath.
Cool. And Guy, one of the things that I struggle with personally as an RPA developer, and most of my viewers, they are RPA developers as well,
yeah,
is that we'll have a lot of technologies around. And it's quite hard to find out which technologies should we focus at. Do you have any good advice here?
Well, in terms of the technologies surrounding RPA or RPA technologies itself?
Yeah, all of tomorrow's technologies, so to say, like computer vision, chatbots. Yeah. So what direction should I and all of the other RPA developers? What direction should we head?
You can think about the technologies surrounding RPA and being infused within RPA as being four. We discuss them as or talk about them as understandings. So you've got 4 understandings. Number 1 is computer vision. So the system, the platform has to understand what it's looking at on the screen in exactly the same way that you or I do, as humans do. And it doesn't matter where it is on the screen or what font or size or color or whatever position. So that's computer vision. The second one is document understanding. So document understanding is, I mean, it's the 21st century, but we're still waiting around in paper. So the system has to understand what's on that piece of paper and then what to transact, whether it's an invoice or a CV or whatever, as an attachment, or indeed whether it's been scanned in. And so you need document understanding, or intelligent document processing, as it's sometimes called, to actually transact those pieces of paper. The third one is process understanding. And process understanding is really important because in most organizations, they find it quite difficult to identify what can be automated to start with, and then how to automate it. So the purpose of process understanding, which consists of both process mining and task capture. And the reason you need both is because process mining looks at the outputs. It looks at the system logs. So it works its way through the process understanding and finds the optimum route through that process, given all the variances and so on. And it comes out, and then it looks at what happened within the systems that process interfaces with. That's great, but it's only half the point. You also need task capture, and the reason that you need task capture is because human input for that particular output varies by person. And the reason for that is very simple. Humans cheat. They find easy ways of doing things. They find workarounds and so on. So you need to work out what the human is actually doing in terms of clicks and keystrokes and so on that creates the output. And then by combining those two, at the moment, what you do is you create the superstructure, the scaffolding, if you like, for how you build the robot. And that would either go to the developer, your community, or to the center of excellence to actually build the robot. Ultimately, the direction of travel we're all moving in is that will become self-building. So the system will just watch what the human does, work out the optimum route, work out all the variances, and then create an automation that will then be tested by your developer community, but will be able to be used off the bat. The second part of process understanding is all about when things change, because processes never stay the same. New bits of technology or new standard operating model or whatever it might be will change the process, and the robot will be the first to spot that because they will see an increase in exception levels. So again, you then have to go back to work out what's changed, how that alters the process, and ultimately we're leading towards self-healing robots. So you have self-building robots and you have self-healing robots. So that's process understanding. And the fourth understanding is all about conversational understanding. So that's, at the moment, that's chatbots and ontologies, but ultimately that's going to be a human voice. And the example that I sometimes use is that, let's say that you work in a bank and the system doesn't understand what needs to happen with something. It will flag it up to the human user, and the human user will just say, okay, stick that in the Wells account. So the system has to understand, in this case, that Wells means Wells Fargo. It does not mean a hole in the ground with water at the bottom or a town in Somerset in the UK, because there were wells. So getting those industry and process specific ontologies right for conversational understanding is really important. So to answer your question, any of those areas as part of the ecosystem are going to be things that more and more organizations focus on. So if you look at what happened during the COVID times, which are a lot still ongoing, the adoption of RPA actually increased with those organizations that had already proven value. Now, the adoption of RPA is ahead of AI. So AI tended to be put on hold. So now is an ideal opportunity as we start to pull out of the pandemic to look at those, either look at RPA itself, because it is the fastest growing enterprise software market at the moment, or start to look for your developer community, start to look at those synergistic understanding technologies that will feed into the whole digital transformation piece.
Cool. And when you say these four areas, like the process mining, the document understanding / computer vision, the speech, chatbots, and that, it seems like four very big pillars. Should I specialize, or should I just try to get a basic understanding in all of these pillars, you think?
It depends on your job.
Yeah.
If you are If you are developing for an organization that is small, then you will probably have to cover all of them. If you're in a very large organization or in a specialist COE, Center of Excellence, then it would be better always to be an expert in something rather than a jack of all trades. Says the ultimate jack of all trades. I'm not technically minded at all.
No. And do UiPath, do we have all these things integrated in the product, or should I go out and find external technologies?
Both. So what we're finding is that as the RPA products become platforms, then these type of technologies will either be being built by the RPA vendors, and in UiPath's case, computer vision is something that we were particularly good at right from the start. Document understanding was originally done through partnerships, and now that's being built internally. Process understanding was originally done through partnerships, and then we acquired that capability when we acquired Process Gold and Stepshot in the back end of last year. And then conversational understanding is all at the moment done through partnerships. But we have development teams in places all beginning with B for some reason. So Bangalore in India, Bucharest in Romania, where we were born, of course, in Brooklyn in New York State, and in Bellevue out on the near Seattle, Washington State. So there are AI teams working on various different bits in all of those areas. So that's just what we're doing. But I think it's a combination of either external growth through partnerships as part of that ecosystem, internally within the RPA vendors that are building platforms, or through acquisition.
Cool. And Guy, let's take some questions, because we have some questions related to what you're saying. UiPath with Jeppe, he makes some awesome... No, that message got retracted, sorry. Jeppe, write it again. We'll take that. That seems to be a good question. But Chat Boss, he asked, hello Chat. He says, as the Chief Evangelist for UiPath, do you have advice for those of us who must act as evangelists for RPA within our own companies? What's your elevator pitch for RPA?
Oh, very good. Okay, so in fact, hang on, there we go. Let's have a look.
Can you see it yourself, the chat?
I think that when you look at RPA, that if you're selling in RPA internally, I mean selling, internally. The way you describe RPA is that RPA is fundamentally reshaping how people work. I mean, it really is that fundamental to business. And it's fundamental because it addresses two issues. One is efficiency, and the second one is employee engagement. Now, the employee engagement part is actually relatively new. So everyone talks about, from RPA from a technology standpoint, but what we're finding is that actually it's the softer issues that are becoming more and more and more important. You read any of the analyst reports on the adoption of RPA, then it all boils down to essentially the people issue rather than the technology issue. So if you're an evangelist inside your organization, it's the ability of improve employee engagement that's really make a fundamental difference to the company. Why? It's because if you remove the boring, mundane, repetitive work that people have to do their job, then it allows them to do what humans are really good at, which is ingenuity, innovation, customer experience, customer service, and that raises the person up as an individual. And if you look at those organizations that are highly unionized or have powerful works councils, interestingly, the unions and works councils like automation as much as they hate outsourcing. I'm an ex-outsourcer, so I know what I'm talking about. They hate outsourcing because once that job is gone, it's gone. Whereas for automation, all you're doing is removing the repetitive work to allow the humans to be more human. And that is a real difference when it comes to actually trying to sell it internally. Now, the increase in efficiency comes because, and particularly in highly regulated environments, The regulators love automation because it is rote, it is fast, it's auditable, and there is the way that business is structured means that they are moving towards what we're terming as a fully automated enterprise. And a fully automated enterprise doesn't mean it's all automation and no people. What it does is it means that there is automation where there can be. And McKinsey, interestingly, and this is a great quote for all the evangelists out there, McKinsey have said that there is just in the US alone, there is 2.6 trillion hours per year of work that is automatable. Now that's just an incredible number. So automation will help develop business in entirely new ways. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. That will help us kick doors in at our companies. So Nasra Safas Khan, hey Nasra. And by the way, viewers, if you like a guy here on this stream, you can really help us with giving the video a thumbs up and just keep the questions coming. Those are great. Nasra, she asked about the process.
The questions are more important than the thumbs up, by the way.
You're right. And thank you, Guy, for being here again. Nasra, she asked about the process of document understanding. I think that's a technical question, and I made a video about that. So unless you have something clever to say, Guy, about the process of document understanding, I think, Nasra, I will send you the link after this conversation. I'll post it in the chat for you, where I'll go through each step in this process of document understanding.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a technical question, by all means, do that. From talking more generality, as an organisation, one of our implementation partners called LARC, L-A-R-C, who automated the 98% of emails that came into an insurance business in South Africa. So 98% of those of emails that come into the business now never seen by a human. So the document understanding was really important because it had to understand what the email was about, had to understand the content, had to open all the attachments, and then the robots would then allocate that work out depending on what it was. And the cost savings that they worked out was 91% cost saving on what it was previously, because the people were literally swivel chair processing emails into the various different allocations. So you can think about it like an old post office where you're posting the letters into the boxes, and all that became automated. So that was all based around document understanding.
Cool, Guy. Thank you. Path, Dashi is with us here. He just say hi. Hi, Path. Nice videos and nice channel you have there. And Jeppe is back with his question, which he's asking, will self-building robots by definition not always be a step behind the, in parentheses, lying and cheating humans, and thereby only be automating the as-was process as opposed to the as-is process?
That's a really good question. And the answer is yes. I mean, without question. The thing about process understanding is that it works out what's happening right now. It's not working out what is to be. So that's where your community comes in. You work out the process using process mining or task capture or whatever as to what's actually happening now. And the advantage of doing that is that you don't need to train people in a new way. But what's interesting, if you look at the history of the adoption of RPA, in one particular company that grew through mergers and acquisitions, they found that they knew that none of the people talked to each other, none of the companies talked to each other, none of the systems talked to each other. There was no way that they could automate on that basis. So what they had to do was, what we did actually, was train up their Lean Six Sigma people, their process improvement people, green belts and black belts and so on. So your community are the equivalents of the green belts and the black belts. You need to work on what the future looks like and sell that internally, do the evangelism job. But you're creating the to be. It's not the as was, it's not the as is, it's the to be. And that's the really important part about what you do, because that's where you really add value to your organization.
Thank you, Guy. And again, it's so awesome that you take your time to answer questions to us developers. I'm getting a lot out of it, and I'm sure all these I can see, based on the questions and the comments, that a lot of people are getting out of it. Thank you, Jeppe, for the questions, and Jeppe, great videos. I watch some of your UiPath videos as well. I really like them. Then we have Taurus Gaming. He says, "Hi Anders, how do we keep up with evolving UiPath changes?"
Well, that's relatively straightforward. I mean, we have two major releases a year. So the .4 and then the .10. So the .4 comes out in April, and then we've got the .10, which comes out in October. So the .4, 21.4 will be coming out, and we've got UiPath Live. I don't know if anyone's seen UiPath Live, but they're brilliantly run, brilliantly created. They would be normally done in person, but the whole lot's online now and has been for over a year. And that will outline all of the new elements to the platform, what's improved, what's been added, and what impact that will have on the developer community, and how you can use that. So that's in March. In fact, if you have a look at the UiPath website, that's going to be announced, I think, in the next couple of days, actually. So you can register and go on that. And then 21.10 is going to come out in October. And for those of you who you can join us at the our Forward. We're planning, for those of you who managed to join us last time in Las Vegas, we're redoing Forward. It will be Forward 4, much bigger, because we're taking the whole of the Bellagio in Las Vegas this year. And that's from the 4th to the 5th and the 6th of October. So again, details of that will come out shortly. But we have updates and blog posts created by our product marketing team happening all the time. So, but if there's anything you want to know specifically, then my email address is guy@uipath.com. Drop me an email and I'll put you in touch with the teams, depending on your area of interest.
Thank you, Guy. And let me add to your answer. I would recommend to go check the UiPath forum. I do that a lot of myself to keep up. I think that's an excellent place for us developers. So if you're not familiar with that, you should definitely go to the UiPath forum. There'll be loads of information and people talking about the different updates as well. So
yeah, I mean, if you look at the the developer community, I mean, we've now trained through UiPath Academies over 750,000 people. That's a lot of developers out there, and the forum is where they get together, and actually, it's the developers who actually come up with, in a lot of cases, with really good ideas. So don't hesitate to come up with ideas, or let us know when you think that something is good, that you've had an idea that you think other people could use, because that's a really nice way of testing everything out and getting peer review. So the forums, I can heartily recommend it. Thanks, Anders.
We agree on that. Chat Lab Pali, he asked, and hello and welcome, he asked, when is UiPath going to start global hackathons this year? Is that your department, Guy?
No, it isn't. Although we've actually been running the AI Summit this week. And so again, look if you're interested in the AI elements and the understanding elements, and have a look at what's been going on there. I think there is a hackathon, but I'm not sure when it is. So I can find out, and I'll let you know, and you can put it in the comments on your video. I'll
put that in the comments. And Chad, he has one excellent question again. He says that there are many examples of UiPath in finance and HR, etc. Any examples of where UiPath is being used on the shop floor? We are a global manufacturing company.
On the shop floor?
Yeah.
So they're a manufacturing business.
Yeah.
So what we're increasingly seeing, I'm not sure whether that is the link towards physical robots. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but what we're finding is that the interface between physical robots and RPA is becoming more stronger and stronger. So what we're finding is that as organizations are moving to edge computing, as increasingly the number of sensors are increasing, and IoT is becoming more and more popular, that the output of those systems is being fed into RPA robots, and then being analysed based on that, because the amount of data being produced by these systems is going into the petabytes. So for manufacturing organisations that are using physical robots and RPA, there is a lot of work going on in that space, particularly in the automotive industry and particularly in high-tech manufacturing as well, which is one of our largest markets.
Cool, thanks. And Guy, we have loads of questions. I'm not sure we will make all of them, and sorry about that, but I think... Yeah, cool. Then Murugan Mudalia, he says, could you please know the required software knowledge for RPA? Because I'm from an F&A background.
No, you don't. So if you go to, if you just Google search on UiPath Academy, there are courses for UiPath for the technical people, so those who have done some coding and so on, and for the non-technical. So that's one of the beauties about, and actually one of the reasons why UiPath platform is doing so well at the moment, is that it's applicable for technical as well as non-technical people. So you do not need to have any coding or technology experience in order to learn how to use UiPath. You'll be using something called Studio X, which is built entirely for people like you who have no technical background to start automating things. So yeah, it's all ready to go.
And let me add to your answer.
Sorry, and all of the training is free of charge.
Yeah, I have nothing more to add then. And then Jeppe, UiPath with Jeppe, he is very active. He asked another great question. He has a roadmap question. We have Automation Hub and hope to get insights once released for the cloud platform.
Yes.
Will there be cradle to grave traceability for ideas submitted to Automation Hub? Then continued, so that we down the road...
We'll find out more about that in 21.4 on the release date. But yes.
Sure, and let me just finish his question because it was continued. So that we down the road can see the actual versus expected profits improvements, what they are, and when automations they reach end of life.
Correct. Absolutely, and then and that's entirely the point. The thing about building robots is that you build them to do a particular process or a particular task. Once that task is done, let's say you're dealing with a backlog, you want to retire that robot. You don't want to keep it going. One of the things about automation when it first started was that you bought the license and people kept those licenses on basically what became redundant processes. So what you need to do is kill off the robots pretty much as fast as you're building them, because you're at least reallocating those licenses, so you're getting maximum value out of them.
Cool, thank you, Guy. Another question, and that is from a person called Anders Jensen. He asked how has because with the situation in society, we are seeing a lot of remote work. Here at my job, I think like 80-90% are sitting home working. How is that changing the how is that changing the API environment?
Right, it's a really good question. So, I mean, let me give you a stat. Forrester have said that there are this year 18 million more people working at home than there were last year, and that's just in the US alone. So it was a Forrester US analyst, so that's why they come up with that figure. 18 million people more working from home than there was last year. So the need for robots to provide useful work for home workers is even more important this year than it was last year, and certainly as it was before. I think that there will be a move back towards offices as the pandemic comes to an end, and as or becomes controllable anyway through the use of vaccines. But nevertheless, some people like working from home and will continue to do so. And a lot of the large organizations, particularly the professional services organizations, have said that people needn't necessarily come back to work from an office ever again. So we as a community, collectively, need to make sure that the attended automation, essentially work from home robots, are doing the connections that you need to. And that's both through the user interface and through APIs. So you will start to see an integration between the user interface and API automation become further and further to the fore.
Cool, thank you. And Boris Crummy is here. Hey Boris,
Hi Boris.
Are you everywhere? Yeah, you know him as well. Then Chad, he's keeping those questions coming. He asked, has UiPath run up against security concerns when automating certain processes, for example, automatically downloading email attachments, which could contain malicious code?
Again, that's a technical question that I have no idea.
No.
But the whole point about RPA is that compliance and governance, and that's the responsibility of the COE, the Centre of Excellence, to make sure that that any downloads are obviously virus checked or malware checked prior to them being opened. But that's just another standard function of operating, which you would do regardless of whether you're using robots or humans, frankly.
Cool. And there's another question from Anders Jensen. He wants to know that are you an evangelist for UiPath or as for the RPA community as a whole?
Both. I mean, I had to be at the start because I was the only one. But I fundamentally believe that if automation is going to have the fundamental impact on individuals and companies and industries and society that we're expecting it to have, then we need to make sure that collectively the vendors, the developers, you and your community, don't leave anyone behind. And so that is not a job for one organization, that's a job for all organizations. So the evangelist role has to focus more on the broader view. I mean, that's why we're doing a lot of work with the World Economic Forum, with the United Nations, and with the European Union on exactly this topic. And it's something that we are working on very closely with terming as automation for good. And you'll see a lot more on that in the coming weeks and months.
Cool, thank you, Guy. And we have two questions which I will make into one. And if you think that I'm a little unfocused, that I look a little bit up, it's because the questions, they come up here on the screen on top. So it's not that I'm not interesting. And Chat Talapeli and Purus Torn, hey guys, hey to both of you. They ask, one of them is asking, what is your prediction about UiPath for the coming 5 years? And then Purus Torn, and thank you for the questions. He asked, what is the future of RPA down the line from 5 years from now? So it's a bit of similar because we see, he says, because we see many new technologies that are not surviving in the market after 5 years. So where is RPA in 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer that question with the classic Gartner hype cycle. So if you look at the Gartner hype cycle, which was invented, funnily enough, by one of their analysts, I think it was about 25 years ago. And if you've seen it, it sort of goes up and then to the peak of inflated expectation and drops into the trough of disillusionment, and then eventually ends up on the plateau of productivity. I think that's what it's called. What's really interesting is that where RPA is on the hype cycle is actually in the trough of disillusionment. Now, although RPA is doing extremely well at the moment in terms of the market, the fact that we're flattening out the bottom of that trough of disillusionment is very interesting. Now, what's interesting about the Gartner hype cycle is that once you get to the end of that hype cycle, it doesn't mean that the technology is obsolete. What it means, and I didn't even know this until I was told by one of the Gartner analysts, that you have 50% adoption in the market. Only 50% adoption in the market. Now, what's interesting is that we're coming out onto that plateau and what I'm expecting over the next 5 years is we will come out of that plateau onto the plateau of productivity, get to the end of the hype cycle, which means that 50% of organizations are using automation throughout their entire organizations. Now, we're not there yet. The adoption rate, although is quite high with across a number of organizations, unfortunately I can't give you any numbers at the moment because we're debarred from giving numbers. But although the adoption rate is very, very strong across organizations in terms of number, the adoption within organizations is still quite low comparatively. So what I'm expecting to see over the next 5 years is automation to spread throughout organizations and across industries, and indeed across supply chains, so across multiple organizations within industries and across industries. So that's what I'm expecting for both UiPath and for RPA in general.
Cool. Thank you, Guy.
I'm slightly restricted on what I can say, so I can't give you any numbers, unfortunately.
Of course. If you have to explain, Murugan asked, explain the difference between RPA and RDA, and my challenge to you is to do it in 10 seconds.
The difference between RPA and what?
And RDA.
RDA?
Yeah.
Right. Basically, RPA is a back office, unattended automation, and that's where it started anyway. RDA is what happens on the desktop. So if you think about RPA sitting on the servers, RDA is sitting on your desktop or laptop. But in fact, they're all coming together now. So we talk about automation. We don't talk about necessarily RDA and RPA.
Cool, Guy. That was 10 seconds. That's excellent. Chad, I was very impressed by the pre-sales technical engineers running the sessions at the Reboot Work Festival. Please thank them for me.
I will.
And he actually have a question as well. He says, how large a company is UiPath?
I can't. Now, at the moment, I can't answer that question. So we are currently what's known as in a quiet period. So those people that know, we put on our confidential S1, as it's known, into the SEC just before Christmas, which means that we're now in a quiet period, which means that unfortunately I can't talk about numbers, I can't talk about total addressable market, I can't talk about anything like that at the moment.
That's okay. We will take the last two questions, and then I will ask Guy for 3 action advice for we as RPA developers. So make sure to stay to the end. And Chad Lapali, he asked, UiPath is mostly concentrating on larger enterprise. I'm sure you will challenge that. What is UiPath's plan for being accessible for smaller enterprises?
Well, that's where we make our money. But actually, we're addressing automation for organizations of all sizes. So organizations below $5 million revenue can use UiPath platform entirely free of charge, forever. And it's not restricted. It's exactly the same that the big enterprises can use. So what we're encouraging organizations to do is automate from the start. So you can use individuals, universities, small organizations can use UiPath free of charge on the cloud. And we have a huge number of small organizations that do that, and that's free. When an organization gets beyond a certain size, then of course we're an enterprise for-profit business, so we start charging. But no, we spend a lot of time focusing on small organizations. And that's where support is provided by the forum. So I would hesitate. I don't hesitate to say to get in touch with the forum, and they'll be able to help you with organisations of any industry, any geography, and any size.
Cool. Thank you, Guy. And if you want to follow Guy on social media, I can recommend his LinkedIn. And I also discovered that you have a YouTube channel, Guy. Are you on everywhere else, like Twitter, or where should we find you?
Well, I've just joined Clubhouse.
Yeah.
Through an invitation through one of our early investors, but I haven't actually tried it yet. So, but I am on Twitter, but I'm probably going to leave it, to tell you the truth. I don't think Twitter is something that helps business much now. But LinkedIn is anything you want to find, you'll probably find on LinkedIn, and that includes the videos that I would post on YouTube as well. But the UiPath platform operates on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Snapchat. I'm not sure about Snapchat actually, but Instagram as well. So we're available on any channel, I think.
Cool.
Well, I'm not sure about Clubhouse. We're going to try. I'm looking at that.
And to the viewers, guys, LinkedIn it's here in the description, so you can go click that link, and it will take you to Guy's LinkedIn. Yeah, I think I'm
Kirkwood on LinkedIn, so which helps.
Cool. Guy, we are taking the last question before we're going to your action advice. Nikolai Valbjørn. Hi, Nikolai. Long time.
Hi, Nikolai.
No, see, he asks, is the best RPA developer a business person or a programmer? And before you ask, Guy, you have to pick one. Which one would you pick?
Today, the best RPA developer is a technical person.
Cool. So
because you can make a real difference really fast.
Cool.
The business people have to learn what to do. Although they're subject matter experts, a developer sitting down with a subject matter expert will be able to do more faster than the business person learning on their own. Cool. I hope that's the right answer.
Nikolai, we hope that you're a programmer and not a business person.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly.
Thank you, Guy. And if we're about to come to an end here, if we should take 3 advices with us as RPA developers, what would that be? I know it can be hard to make a general advice, but what would you say that we should focus on, or what technology should we learn now?
Yeah, if you're a developer in the RPA space, that is a good thing. And it doesn't matter what platform, what product you're learning and implementing into your organization. Now, my marketing department will hate me for saying that, but actually, the whole point about automation is it's helping your colleagues to get more from life, more from work. Our Chief Executive and co-founder, Daniel Dinez, has used the word joy. Who on earth talks about joy when they're talking about work? But you are in an absolutely perfect position to help your colleagues achieve joy in their work. That's number one. Number two, when we talk about technologies, keep abreast of what's happening. Not keep abreast of what's happening today, but keep abreast of what's happening tomorrow. So go onto the sites that have the startups, that have the crunch bases of this world. Find out what are the interesting technologies. Keep an eye on what Gartner have as the cool vendors, because that's the technology that's going to have an impact tomorrow. And you can have a look about either getting a job with them, which would be a lovely thing to do, or learning the technology so that you can implement it into your organizations. In not today, but in the next 2 or 3 years. Finally, I would say that balance between, to really talking about programmers versus business people, get that balance right between the ability of coding, the ability to build automation and use AI is becoming more and more and more important in the world. That's why the Academic Alliance, which that we've set up, and now is teaching RPA in over 800 universities around the world. That means that you're going to get a cohort of people coming through university that you can help either build your own business or help you to develop your own career within your organizations. So use those people as they come out of university and out of colleges that learn and know about RPA to help you in the development of your career, because it's all about your career. So those are the 3.
Thank you, Guy. And let me add to Guy's second answer, and actually the whole interview. Guy is talking a lot about the Gartner reports, and that's a big analyst company that make reports about technology in general, but as RPA, they make a lot of RPA specific reports as well. They can be really expensive, but here's a pro tip for you. All the big RPA vendors, especially UiPath, they will give you these reports for free. Of course, they might be a little biased because that will be the ones where the vendors score great, but I'm sure UiPath will score great in most of the RPA reports. But you can get.
No, how can you say that? That's nuts.
But you can get them for free, and actually I put together all the links from the UiPath. You have to give your details, and then you can download them from UiPath. I'll post that link in the description as well, so that
Fantastic.
will, yeah, I like that. So Guy, thank you for being so kind with your time.
It is my pleasure, and thank you all for the fantastic questions. Really good questions. I mean, I find these, actually, funnily enough, we're talking about the business versus developer community. The questions I get from business people are never as interesting as I get from the developer community. So it is my pleasure to talk to you, genuinely.
Cool, and I learned a lot as well. And thank you, viewers. Thank you for all the great questions that came here, and thank you for spending time with us. See you, Guy, and see you, viewers.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.